Hello, hello, I'm Harlow, and welcome to my channel and the very first episode of Cosmetics and Classics. I am a vintage style and classic film content creator, and I've hosted a podcast called The Vintage Millennial, where myself and a different guest watch and discuss a film made between the silent era and the year 1980. I've been doing that for a couple years, and I've been thinking, what would be the next step for me in my content creating journey? I was watching my Queen Bailey Sarian one day, and I was thinking, you know, there's so many other people who do what I lovingly refer to as get chatty with me's, where people like Bailey and also Kenny J.D., I love Jamie French, I love Brittany Vaughn, I love Better Off Red, I love Fundy Fridays. If you don't know their channels, I will link them below. They're all amazing content creators, and they do their makeup while talking about something that they're passionate about. And I realized no one was doing that with old movies. Vintage content, if you will. And I was like, well, I got nothing to do. This sounds cool. I'll do that. Yeah, why not? And so here we are, Cosmetics and Classics. So each episode I will be discussing a different classic film, probably the same format as my podcast, so silent film to the year 1980. Don't ask me why 1980 is the cutoff. It just is what it is. I can tell you why 1980 is the cutoff, because I want to talk about 9 to 5 eventually. I also will discuss films that were made past that, but set in old Hollywood during the years that I would be discussing a movie made during that time. Made sense to me, hopefully it made sense to y'all, but we digress. And I will be doing my makeup at the same time. I am not a makeup artist. I'm actually very semi-new to makeup. I've been wearing lipstick for years, and recently, like over the summer, I just started building more makeup, and I really love it. It relaxes me. Like, whenever I put on my makeup, I feel like I'm like some old rich man's bimbo that's just laying up in the manse, and they got nothing to do all day, so instead of painting, they paint their face. Like, that's how I feel when I do my makeup. It just gives me this, I don't even have words, I just have body movements to describe how I love putting it on. So that's what we're gonna do. So that's what this is all about. Alfie, we're not a singer, but we think we are. Let's get started. I'm so excited to be discussing this movie today. It's literally the movie that made me fall in love with movies, which is why I wanted to talk about this movie first. One, as like an introduction to you guys, but two, it's just such a fabulous film. That film, you might be asking, you might be like, why are they rambling? I just ramble. It's what I do. It's what I am. Verb, it's what you do. But we digress. And that movie is 1953's Gentelmen Prefer Blondes. Now, if you don't know what Gentelmen Prefer Blondes is, I will tell you. I'll give you a synopsis. That's right. Two best friends, Lorelei Lee and Dorothy Shaw, two showgirls who go on a cruise and have comedic times, comedic loves, comedic all around. Like I said, the reason why I chose this movie is because it really was the first movie that made me fall in love with movies. I saw it at a very young age. I think as queer people too, we will see something at a very young age, and that will have such a huge impact on us that it just stays with us for the rest of our lives. Like, this movie still today inspires me, impacts me. I am such a Marilyn Monroe stan. Some of my friends might even call me a Marilyn gatekeeper. Comment below after this if you think so, because we probably are, but I don't want to change, you know? So that's why I chose this movie. Let's start talking about the movie, and let's put some makeup on this face. So the movie was released through 20th Century Fox in 1953, and the movie has a really interesting backstory of how it went from its genesis to being the movie that we know today. So the movie actually was based on a musical, but the musical was based on a book that was published in 1925 by a woman named Anita Loos. Now let me tell you about Miss Anita Loos. Miss Anita Loos was a baddie bag 2x4, will pound you to the floor. Like, she was the doll. She was the moment. Now, come on. Like, it really is actually, like, truly a groundbreaking writer, playwright, She wrote novels, she wrote screenplays. As I said, she also was a playwright. She wrote Gentelmen Prefer Blondes in, as I said, 1925. That is one of her, like, I would say her most well-known pieces of work. A lot of her work really centered around female sexuality and making sex funny. And you gotta remember, this is, I mean, she's writing in the 1920s, and it's such a conservative time period. I mean, she lived through multiple conservative time periods. She was working through conservative time periods, but she was writing about female sexuality in such a funny, smart, sophisticated way that, I mean, comment below if I'm wrong, but people weren't, like, no one was doing that like that then. She also was the very first female staff writer in Hollywood. She worked with famed director D.W. Griffith. He was very well known during the silent era. He worked a lot with Lillian Gish, but we digress because this is not about him. It's about Miss Luce, darling. Her book, which was about a blonde flapper and her ventures in New York and in Europe, which is literally, other than like New York and a cruise ship in Europe, movie's very different. Very, very, very different. So in 1949, Anita and a man by the name of Joseph Fields adapted her book for the stage for the musical Gentelmen Prefer Blondes, which came out in 1949. And that starred the one and only Carol Channing, one of Broadway's greatest legends. That was her, like, big break. Like, she had been in some other productions before and was making a name for herself around New York in the nightlife scene, I believe. But it really was Gentelmen Prefer Blondes that made her into a household name. She played Lorelei Lee, which is the part that Marilyn Monroe plays in the movie. And she was the first person ever sing Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, and that actually really was her signature song for pretty much her whole career. It fully launched her into major Broadway stardom. And then, of course, you know, she later went on, like, what, I think maybe 15, 16 years later to do Hello, Dolly, which, like, fully cemented her as the legend that we know today and love. Don't we love Carol Channing? I love Carol Channing. I really wonder, side note, I wonder what her Lorelei Lee on film would have been like. I don't know if there's a Dorothy character. She has like a best friend in the musical, because I believe the musical really sticks closely to the book. And I also don't know if there's like a Dorothy in that book, in the book. But if Carol Channing was cast in Gentelmen Prefer Blondes, the movie, and how they did the movie, I actually think it would be fabulous to see B. Arthur or Elaine Stritch as her Dorothy. I think that teaming would have been, ooh, gay heaven. Gay heaven. Oh. And then, so, you know, a few years later, you know, Fox buys the rights and they make the movie. And the movie stars Marilyn Monroe, Jane Russell, Charles Coburn, Tommy Noonan, Elliot Reed, George Winslow, Taylor Holmes, and Norma Varden. So let's talk about our two main stars for just a moment, because this movie is a very big deal for Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe. So we'll first talk about Jane. So Jane was already like a pretty established star in Hollywood. She really broke out to fame in Howard Hughes's Disaster. I've never seen it, I just heard it's a disaster. But it did produce some of the most iconic pinup shots of the 1940s with Jane Russell sitting on the haystack. So, you know, I guess win-win in some ways. But she got really famous and got well known for that film. Gentelmen Prefer Blondes is pretty much, I would say, her best film. Dare I say, comment below if I'm wrong, but I think for most people this is like the peak film of Jane Russell's career. And she's so good in this movie. She's so talented. She's so funny. I really like her in this movie. However, we gotta discuss Marilyn. Marilyn pre-1953, I would say, was really climbing the ladder of Hollywood. She, I would say, was starlet status still by this point, but she really was, like, she was working. The doll was booked and blessed for like a really good while. She re-signed to Fox. She was originally signed to Fox in the mid-40s, and then they dropped her. Then they re-signed her again, and she started making more and more films. And she did do comedies. There are a few comedies in her filmography pre-Gentelmen Prefer Blondes. They're nothing really to talk about. The work that she did to actually talk about really were her melodramas and noirs. See, she was really building up a really interesting resume of dramas before Gentelmen Prefer Blondes. Like, She has very small parts in All About Eve and Clash by Night and The Asphalt Jungle, but then and also had a lead role in one of the most underrated noirs, I think, called Don't Bother to Knock, which was made in 1952, and I still stand that as Marilyn's best performance. If you don't believe Marilyn Monroe can act, go watch that movie, because she's so good. But also, like, if you don't think Marilyn Monroe can act, that probably means, one, you don't, like, see comedy as, like, legitimate acting, which, girl, we're still doing that. But it just is so good. Like, she's just so good. She really was showing range. She was showing range and versatility to the judges, and they were all like, we don't see it really, you know, because misogyny is a real thing in Hollywood. It's a real thing everywhere. But we digress. Before 1953, still pretty big starlet status, but really climbing the ladder. And then 1953 happened, and Mama flew. So she made Niagara, which was a noir, and she is so good in that. She is an absolute conniving. She is so sexy in that movie. And then she had How to Marry a Millionaire. Those two movies and Gentelmen Prefer Blondes, and we'll talk about how Gentelmen Prefer Blondes did, but like, my God, like, really 1953 was the year of Marilyn Monroe. It was fully the year that she became Marilyn Monroe. She really became the biggest movie star, biggest entity on the planet. So the movie was directed by Howard Hawks, who, very legendary movie director in Hollywood, and not only like legendary film director, but also a like truly very versatile director. He did comedies, he did screwball comedies, he did noirs, he did like action, he did musicals like Gentelmen Prefer Blondes. Like, he really had a range to direct in a way that a lot of, I don't know, just seemed, you know, had a lot more range than a lot of other directors. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I wouldn't classify Howard Hawks as one of my like all-time favorite directors, but the man had range. He did show the judges versatility. You know, I was saying earlier, I have a love-hate relationship with eyeliner, and the reason why is because every time I do it, no matter what, I'm like, let's do like a subtle Marilyn type cat eye. And then it's not that subtle, but like, I love it. I'm not that subtle, so I think it's perfect for me. It's also never even. Like, my eyeliner is fraternal twins for sure. We're still learning. I've only been doing eyeliner for like 2 months, I think, and I don't have a steady hand. Why am I making excuses? Stop making excuses. Stop apologizing for, I don't know, already being naturally beautiful. Don't do that, gals, guys, and all in between. By the way, I'm non-binary. My pronouns are they, them, if anyone's out there wondering. But we digress and wipe off our sweaty brow. That's not our brow. I know where things are on my body. So the screenplay for the movie was adapted by Charles Lederer, and the music for the film was made by Jules Stein, who also did the music for the Broadway show, the legendary Hoagie Carmichael, Elliot Daniel, and Lionel Newman. And the choreography was by Jack Cole, but his assistant choreographer, get this, was Gwen Verdon. And if you don't know who Gwen Verdon is, or was, she always will be, a Broadway legend. Oh, I speak French, by the way. Just FYI, I know, very impressive. I'm very bilingual. That was Broadway legend. She was like a 4-time Tony Award winner. She originated Charity in Sweet Charity. She originated Roxy Hart in the musical version of Chicago. She was married and well-known partner, like work partners with Bob Fosse. Like, she, like, incredible legend. And she was the assistant choreographer on this film, and basically all the musical numbers in this movie were directed by these two, essentially, which I find very fascinating. I believe even Howard Hawks was like, yeah, the musicals, I don't know her. Maybe he wasn't that versatile after all. No, he's still pretty versatile. I guess musical numbers, directing them weren't like his thing, which, fair, not everyone can do them. And at least he knew, right? And the cinematography was by Harold J. Wild, and it's so beautiful. I love that 50s Technicolor Cinemascope. It's just so beautiful to look at. The movie was a massive commercial and critical hit, The budget was somewhere around $2 million, and it made $5 million worldwide at the box office. The movie was the 8th highest grossing film of 1953, and How to Marry a Millionaire, Marilyn's other big comedy of that year, was the 5th highest grossing. So Marilyn had 2 films that were the highest grossing films of 1953. The film received rave reviews. Variety gave it a really great review. Variety wrote that Hawks maintains a racy air that brings the musical off excellently at a pace that helps cloak the fact that it's rather lightweight but sexy stuff. However, not much more is needed when patrons can look at Russell Monroe lines as displayed in slick costumes and Technicolor. And Harrison's report wrote, both Jane Russell and Marilyn Monroe are nothing short of sensational in the leading roles. They not only act well, but the sexy manner in which they display their song, dance, and portrait. What word? I can't read. I can't read. Values just about sets the screen on fire and certainly is crowd pleasing, judging by the thunderous applause at the preview after each of the well-staged musical numbers. Now, this movie has a long legacy. The Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend number, which is from this movie, has been redone so many countless times. I can't even name everyone. The ones that come to mind immediately are obviously Madonna. That's probably the most famous. That was basically the idea for her Material Girl video. Beyonce did that for a commercial, I believe. Christina Aguilera did it for Burlesque, you know, that awful film. I said what I said. Ariana Grande, Kylie Minogue, Holly Madison on The Girls Next Door, I remember. She did like one of her centerfolds for Playboy, recreating Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Like, it's just so iconic. The movie itself is just so iconic. And speaking of this iconic movie, let's jump into the movie now. So this movie's opening is very different from how most movie musicals of its time opened. Let me explain. Throughout the golden era of Hollywood, which this movie was made in, and that era really does start, is technically around when the silent films ended, which is really sad because low-key, bold opinion, but sound really did ruin film. I will explain that probably one day. I'll give a fuller opinion on that when I talk about a silent film. But right now, we're just digressing, as we always do. Most movie musicals that were made around this time and earlier would have, like, a typical movie opening, like a big booming score, and they would then have a scene, and then the musical number, or it would be like a little opening, and then the musical number. This movie fully opens with the musical number, like no opening credits, no opening score, just straight into the music number. And I was thinking, you know, I've seen this movie so many times, but rewatching it to talk about it with y'all, I noticed this for the first time that, like, no movie musicals did that at that time. Like, it really was something so different. I had never, you know, I was thinking about all the movie musicals that were made before Gentelmen and literally couldn't think of one that didn't have like a traditional movie opening. So this movie, I'm just gonna say it really did change the game of movie musicals, but because especially movie musicals made today do that. Chicago did that. The Hairspray movie that came out in 2007 opens like that. Dreamgirls opens like that. Little Shop of Horrors opens like that. So many movie musicals that most people my generation grew up with, like those are the openings, like just straight into the song. And I don't know, I just think that's so cool. You know, very different. And I love this opening scene. So this music number is Little Girl from Little Rock. It's one of those scenes where, I mean, I would say this and the Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend scene are by far the most iconic numbers in this movie. And I think the reason why both of them are so iconic is that when you look at them at first glance, they're very simple looking. Like, the opening scene, you're like, okay, there's like a purple backdrop that's lit. There's some lacy curtains, okay, and then like some red gowns. That's it. But then you look closely and you're like, that is such a beautiful color of purple. And then the black lace curtains are sequined. And then you look like at the detail of Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell's gowns and you're like, and it's just so simply beautiful. And to just like the cherry on this Sunday, Marilyn and Jane, like their chemistry from the jump, the minute that they are shown on screen, is at a trillion. Like, they have some of the best screen chemistry you will ever see on film. It's truly, oh, I forgot to do my ears. My God, pardon-moi. See, I told you I was bilingual. It just is something that I think, you know, comes every now and then. I don't think we see screen partnerships that beautifully done. Like, we just don't, especially nowadays. Like, there's no real, like, movie partnerships anymore, you know? And also at that time, too, like, there weren't women doing that. Like, we think, like, old Hollywood fans out there, cinephiles, boobies, babies, think about this. How many, like, strong female comic duos are there in general? Like, it's so wild because, like, let's be honest, women are way funnier. Way funnier. Fight me below. It's Aries season. I'm ready. I am an Aries. My birthday's actually in a couple days. I'll be 25 for the billionth time. And I would say that this opening number and then the scene following right after really establishes our main characters. Well, actually, it's basically between this and our next musical number, which is Bye Bye Baby, which takes place on the cruise ship that Lorelai and Dorothy, aka Marilyn Monroe and Jane Russell, are going to go on. So before we get there, though, I will just fill you all in on a little bit so things make a little bit more sense if you haven't seen the movie. Lorelai is very excited because Lorelai's like, Dorothy, my rich man Gus, he's in the audience. And I think he has a present for me because it looks like there was a ring box in his pocket. That's right, Lorelai can see jewelry boxes in men's pockets while stage lights are burning her eye sockets out. Talent, 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 talent. Lorelai Lee, honestly, a visionary. And I will get into more why she's a visionary, but an absolute visionary. So Dorothy's like, okay, calm down, girl. Which is basically their relationship. Lorelai is like, oh my God, he's rich, money, diamonds, let's be fabulous. And Dorothy's like, we're already fabulous, calm down. Like, that's very much their energies. Very odd couple relationship. I love. And they're so, I'm sorry to keep going on, they're just so good at it. But so eventually Gus, aka, as I said, Lorelai's man, comes backstage to give her a little kiss, and he does have a ring in his pocket. And another one giving a high five. And basically, like, they're not engaged, but they're, like, engaged, basically, or they're on their way to becoming engaged. The problem is that Gus comes from this, like, very wealthy family that does not want him to marry Lorelai. And Gus is very much like, I do whatever daddy tells me to do. So there's just a lot of things getting in the way, a lot of family drama. This actually gets basically shown right away when Dorothy and, oh, wait a minute, they are engaged. So that is the engagement ring, basically, that he's presenting her. And I haven't a full proposal. I would be pissed, but we digress. And Lorelai tells Dorothy after she gets the ring, like, we're going to be married. We're going on a cruise to Paris, and we're going to get married on the boat. And Dorothy immediately is like, I know why you're doing this. Like, this dude is like he got dough, Ray and me. He comes from the kind of family that if there's a wedding, no one elopes. You only elope if, like, someone's pregnant or they don't like the person you're marrying, or both. And she immediately catches that. They're talking about it until Gus gets a call from his dad, and immediately when he leaves the room, Dorothy's like, that's the way the old ball bounces. Like, she just knows that, like, the dad tracks everyone down, and whenever someone sees Gus get a little too close to Lorelai, they're gonna grab him away with a phone call from daddy. You can tell, like, it's just a continual pattern just by Dorothy's reaction. Lorelai is like, I'm going to Paris with or without him, because if I go without him, he's going to chase me, because do I need to explain? Like, this is the first time that, like, we're supposed to understand, we should understand how smart Lorelai is. Lorelai might be very airy, but she is very smart. And the scene ends with Lorelai being like, Mr. Esmond has a very hard time to say no to me. Liv, she's so good. She's so good. So we move on and we're checking in for the cruise ship with Lorelai and with Dorothy, and Mr. Esmond is there to see both of them off. And when we check in, we notice that there is a group of very muscular men in matching suits. I just realized something. Okay, so side note, as much as I love this movie, every time I watch it more and more as an adult, I notice the amount of plot holes in this movie. Like, no one, like, the smallest things, it's like, how did you not, like, just notice that? Like, for example, okay, wait, they do say what team they are on for the Olympics. But still, there's a lot of plot holes in this movie that we'll get to eventually. We find out that this group of men are on the relay team for the United States Olympics, and Dorothy is excited. Because, see, this is the difference between Dorothy and Lorelai. Lorelai is looking to marry a rich man, but, like, also kind of, like, love him at the same time, but, like, really love his money more, but, like, also love him. She's really looking for the money, let's be honest. She just happens to fall in love with Gus eventually. Spoiler alert. This whole thing is a spoiler alert. I shouldn't have to say spoiler alert when literally what I'm doing is just one long spoiler alert, but we digress. And Dorothy, though, is like, I'm just here to she wants her back thrown out, if I'm putting it bluntly. Dorothy wants to get laid. She's in it for a good time, not a long time, if that makes sense. When she sees the Olympic team, she's literally like, for me, how kind. Digs on the shot put. Like, Dorothy, like, go off, sis. Go off, sis. And she makes a comment later on, because there's a certain point where Lorelai wants her to settle down and marry for money. She wants her to be on her game playing too. So she's looking at the list of guests on the cruise ship and seeing if they have a valet, which basically is like a traveling butler, to set up for Dorothy, which we'll get back to. Dorothy's like, I just want a man who can run faster than me. She's definitely a size queen. Comment below, is Dorothy a size queen? I think so. And if you don't know what size queen means, you need more gay friends. You need more gay friends out there. So while we're checking in, we notice there is a man there, and that man happens to be a man by the name of Ernie. And Ernie is being hired by Gus's dad to essentially spy on Lorelai. Because Daddy Esmond does not believe that Lorelai is going to be faithful to Gus. And here's the thing, and this is what I don't understand. If you're going to be, like, this is where bimbos, like, we get underestimated. Because bimbos, there's always a plan. There's always a plan, there's always a thought going on. Even though it doesn't seem like it, there's always plotting up in that noggin. They're checking in, and immediately he sees the two of them, Ernie, and he's like, I like the brunette. His boss is like, you're not here for that, calm down, keep it in your pants. Does he? We'll find out. And we're on the cruise ship. We get Lorelai and Gus get into the room. Dorothy runs off because someone whistles at her. And Gus kind of gives Lorelai let me fix this real quick. Gus gives her like an envelope of money and then is like, I need you to be on your best behavior. And Lorelai's like, yeah, da. And then Dorothy comes in with, like, the whole relay team and the whole group of other people to have a bon voyage party. Gus is like, Dorothy Shaw, you're supposed to be the chaperone. And then Dorothy, my queen, comes back and it's like, look, Gus, the chaperone's job is to make sure that no one else is having fun. But no one chaperones the chaperone. That's why I'm so ripe for this job. My queens, I'm telling you, these women were like sashayed so Romeo and Michelle could do that dance at the end of the movie. I love them. I just absolutely love them. They're so, I just love them. They are still idols of mine so many years later. And now this is where the song Bye Bye Baby comes in, and it's just a bon voyage song, and has two parts, essentially. It has Dorothy's part, which is the party part. She's with everyone. She's with the relay team. There's some other women there. But then we get a very mellow moment, a very intimate moment between Gus and Lorelai. And Lorelai starts singing Bye Bye Baby to Gus in like a almost lullaby-ish kind of way. And she sings this in a way to assure Gus that you really don't have to worry about me. I'm going to be okay. I'm coming back to you because I do love you. She loves the money. But she does love him. She doesn't admit it until the end, but it's very clear to me right away that she does actually love this nerdy, neurotic little dude. Nerdy and neurotic. So after the song, they're set a sail. As I said, we have that scene where Lorelai is looking up rich men to set up with Dorothy, and she finds one named Henry Spofford III. while she's doing all this, Ernie's spying and listening, and so he's just assuming that Dorothy's exactly like Lorelai. So before dinner, they're having a little cocktail hour. Dorothy gets there first, and she meets a couple of people, including Sir Francis Beekman, aka Piggy. This is some old gas bag who is loaded beyond his wildest dreams, but beyond my wildest dreams, beyond your wildest dreams too, probably, for like all of our dreams. Like, damn, he is rich. And Dorothy and him are talking. We find out that he owns a diamond mine. Dorothy's like, do not mention that in front of my friend. Just don't mention it. She's like, I cannot explain to you why. Just please don't mention you have a diamond mine. The minute she says that, who is right behind her? And it's like, did you say diamonds? And so they're talking, and then his wife comes in, Lady Beekman, who Dorothy looks at and goes, I thought that was his diamond mine, because she is decked. She is decked from head to toe in the dimes. She has a tiara with her, which, that's how you know someone back in the day was real rich, when they just carried and wore like a diamond tiara because it's cocktail hour. That's drag. That is absolute drag. I don't think rich ladies, like real rich, like, ladies understand that what they're doing essentially is drag. It's so funny and camp to me. She shows Lorelai the tiara. Lorelai tries to put it around her neck, and they're telling her, like, it goes on your head, and she doesn't believe them. And then Lady Beekman puts the tiara on her head, and then we get the iconic, you do wear them on your head. I just love finding new places to wear diamonds. Lady Beekman and Piggy, Sir Francis Beekman, we're just calling him Piggy, walks away, and then we move on to our dinner reservations. We're waiting for Mr. Henry Spockford III, and turns out he is like a 7-year-old child who sounds literally out of Charlie Brown. I actually, at one point, was so sure that he eventually was a voice actor for Charlie Brown. I looked him up. Don't know what the kid's name is, but he wasn't. So I think I'm trying to decide. This is a kimchi cheek palette. It's a cheeky threesome. Oh, Kim, you sly puss. I think I'm gonna go with the middle one. What is the middle one called? Does it have a name? No? Well, if it has a name, I'm sorry, Kim, but I'm gonna be using that one. So after dinner, we meet up with Ernie for drinks. He and Dorothy are flirting. They have more flirtation. It's basically just a build-up for their, like, romance. And things are going great. They have, like, a moonlight kiss. Very sweet, very romantic. Dorothy is wearing a gorgeous, like, Spanish-style shawl over her head. And she's got gorgeous red lips. She just looks so... Jane Russell was so beautiful. Like, she was so beautiful. And her in Moonlight, like, girl, everything. Everything. And however, though, like most of my romances, like all my romances, what starts out great ends tragically. So it's the next day after their big moonlight kiss, and Dorothy is walking along, and she notices that Ernie is taking photos through the like round window outside of their cabin, and she's like, "The fuck? Why are you taking pictures of my cabin?" So Dorothy looks in and she sees, give me 1 second. I don't know if you can see it, but like I always like to draw a little mole. As I said, this is my natural look, very inspired by Miss Monroe. So Dorothy looks in to see what Ernie was taking photos of. And let me tell you, but before I do, let me just give myself a look. The beauty mark of life. Voila. I don't know if you can see it, but it's there. It is there. So Dorothy rushes to see that Lorelai is talking to Piggy, and Piggy's teaching her Swahili. And then Dorothy comes rushing in, and she makes up an excuse like, Lady Beekman is looking for you, and he freaks out because he knows he should not be with Lorelai. Lorelai, once he leaves, is annoyed with Dorothy because, well, maybe she wasn't trying to, like, run off with him. She was just trying to see what she could get out of him, which I don't see what the problem is, if I'm being honest. Sorry. But she's annoyed. She's like, that's an awful thing to do, Lady Beekman. And she's like, shut up, girl. We have issues. And she tells Lorelai that she saw Ernie taking photos and was like, what were you two doing? And then basically, Lorelai explains how Piggy was teaching Lorelai how snakes kill goats in Africa and was demonstrating it with him being the snake and her the goat. Have you ever heard of such ishery? Actually, probably you have. It's 2022. We've had a lot of ishery. It's just so funny. Like, the explanation is so funny, and Marilyn's delivery is just so funny. Marilyn Monroe was a comedy queen, point blank, period. Try to fight me, you can't. And they realize that, like, they need to figure out what to do, because Ernie now has pictures of Lorelai being, I'm sorry, it's just so funny, being the goat, and Piggy being this, like, what? I can't. Why am I here? So they develop a plan, and we see that in the next scene. Before I talk about the plan, I just want to point out, so the lipstick I'm going to put on, oh my god, am I about to do the influencer thing? Yes, I am. Oh my god. How wild. So this lipstick is from Besame Cosmetics, and it was part of their Marilyn Monroe collection. If you're not familiar with Besame, they're an iconic makeup brand, and they do like all incredible vintage style packaging. And when I'm done with this lipstick, I'm literally going to keep it and just like place it. With all their products, I like to do that. It's so beautiful. And I love this color. It's like very different from any red I typically wear. It has a more like pink undertone to it, and I love that. Normally I'm much more like 1940s femme fatale, blue-red kind of queen, you know? But we digress. I'm gonna put this on, and then I will come back and tell y'all the rest of this film. Okay, lipstick on. We're finished. So, let's get back to La Cinéma, darling. Ooh. French subtitles below, comment below. So we dock in Paris, and now we get a gorgeous, beautiful montage of Parisian shopping, darling. I'm sorry, I'll try not to speak French as much. It's very intimidating to be bilingual, I get it. Sorry, I'm beautiful and bilingual. It's not my fault. But we get this amazing, for me it's amazing just because I love vintage clothing so much. I love that era of fashion so much, that era of haute couture so much. And we just see Balenciaga, Dior, Schiaparelli, like we just see like all of these, mwah. And after the montage is done, Lorelai and Dorothy check into the hotel, and they have some people waiting for them, including Ernie and Lady Beekman, or as Lorelai first calls her, Lady Piggy. The shade, Lorelai. I don't think you meant it, but the shade, regardless. And they ask her to basically give the tiara back, and Dorothy's like, she doesn't have the tiara until she looks at her face, and she's like, oh, Lorelai, like, come on. And Lorelai's like, Piggy gave it to me, I'm not giving it back. And that's how they end things. Turns out, you know, because Ernie, so this is where I really despise Ernie, and I'll tell you why. Because Ernie is, as I said, he's with Lady Beekman. Ernie had the recording, and Ernie is like going along with this plot that Lorelai stole the tiara. But Ernie has it on recording of Piggy saying that he would give the tiara to Lorelai. Like, he's purposely going out of his way to get rid of Lorelai so he could be with Dorothy. I'm gonna get you, sir. See this face, Ernie? See this face, Elliot Reed? It's gonna haunt you. I think he's dead, so maybe he's gonna haunt me. Ugh. Because Ernie had this information, he told Daddy Esmond, and Daddy Esmond told Gus, and Gus canceled Lorelai's letter of credit, the money that he gave to her to use in Paris, which now they don't have any money. They're kicked out of their hotel. And the two of them, Dorothy and Lorelai, go to a cafe. They're only able to like afford like a cup of coffee. And then this is when we get our second to last, well, technically our second to last it's our second to last full musical number, which is When Love Goes Wrong. And it's just all about, when love goes wrong, nothing goes right. That's one thing they know. And it becomes this big street number, which then we move on to the next scene and we see that the two of them are now headlining a Parisian showgirl show. Or they're showgirls and headlining showgirls in a Parisian show. There you go. There you go. And Gus comes in. It's exactly what Lorelai said would happen, except minus, her, getting the money taken away from her. But Gus comes in and to see the show, sees where they are, and he's horrified because they're basically doing the same job, but in Paris. Oh! He comes backstage, and Lorelai and Dorothy literally are Mariah carrying I Don't Know Her to him. And he follows them into the dressing room, and he's trying to, win them back. Lorelai's about to go on for her next number, and she's, like, it's the men like you that make me the way that I am. And I felt that. That was beat poetry to me. And Lorelai leaves, and Gus is like, am I really the problem? And Dorothy's just kind of like sitting there being like, men are so stupid. And Dorothy's like, if you're confused now, go out and see her number. And he's like, you mean? And she's like, huh. And then he's like, oh. Like, they know, like, they're secretly communicating because she obviously has done this number before. And he hates this number. And she's about to go out and kill the number. And that number is Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. So we move on, and as I said, we are at the Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. The most iconic scene in this movie, one of the most iconic scenes in 1950s cinema, in American musical cinema, and cinema, period. And as I said about the opening, the two little girls from Little Rock scene, it has the same vibe of, like, when you first, like, are just glancing, you're like, it's very simple. Everything's red except for the chandelier and the seats and the light fixture or whatever, which are all black and with female mannequins in the air. And Marilyn is just in her pink gown, kind of like facing the back, like her back is facing us, couples dancing. Great. But then you look at the details and you realize those aren't mannequins. Those are real ass extras. Those are real dolls up in the sky and being used as light fixtures. And then you see that, like, the couch is like this rich velvet that gets like really picked up well by the cinematography. And then you see like the costumes on the female extras that are dancing, these like over the top Dior meets ballet pink confections with flowers in their hair and one of those like black masks that go over the face but they're veils. It just is such a moment. And then Marilyn starts, and it just becomes an iconic moment. It's what's so fascinating to me. So fun note, when Marilyn starts singing the prefix, is that what you call it? Before she really gets into the song, that's not her voice. That's actually the voice of Marnie Nixon, who was known as the ghostess with the mostest. She's probably the most famous ghost singer in Hollywood history. She dubbed the vocals for Deborah Carr, and then King and I, Natalie Wood, and West Side Story, Audrey Hepburn, and My Fair Lady. Like, she just did them all. And she was able to really, like, I don't know, like, her voice is so distinct, but it always fit the actress that she was doing. She was just so amazingly talented. I'm sure I'll talk about her more in depth when I do other episodes of the movies I just named. But then the rest of it is Marilyn's voice, except for when she hits, like, that note, like that Tiffany's, that's Marty. And so the song ends, and Gus is pissed, as he would be, and they go back, we're backstage with Lorelai and Dorothy, and Dorothy is getting ready for her number, and Lorelai's helping her, and she's like, you know what, I really do love Gus. He's my man, he's my dude, I love him. And Dorothy's like, go off, sis. And then the police come knocking on the door. Side note, one of my favorite content creators on this platform, Lixaria, she pointed this out in one of her top model reviews, that in France, police are Jean-Marie, I forget how to pronounce, but when you look at the spelling, it's Gender Mary. Gender Mary. Or Gender Mary. Amazing. They're coming for Lorelai. They have a warrant because, she has the tiara still. Then some more hijinks starts happening because they come up with a plan. And that plan is to basically get Lorelai to get Gus back in her good graces, and then Dorothy will go off with the Maries to court in a blonde wig and pretend to be Lorelai and get her out of the situation. And that's exactly what they do. Like, again, the plot holes. I know it's a movie. I'm looking at the camera. I'm telling y'all, I know it's a movie. But, Mary, the Gentelmen are not going to buy that. But they do. And we get a reprise of Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend from Jane Russell. And Jane Russell kills her Marilyn as Lorelai impression too. Lorelai, you know, we see her basically seduce Mr. Esmond into coming into the dressing room. She looks at him and she says, "Come on in, Daddy darling. I'm getting your money." In between all this, we see Ernie at the airport. He's done. He's moving on. Except he sees Piggy at the airport, and Piggy acts like he didn't know her at all. Gives her a whole different name, and then it's like, just kidding, and it's like, what? And he gives Ernie this cryptic message to give to Lorelai, which then he figures out, and he goes to the courthouse, and when he sees that it's Dorothy, he's about to, like, tell the court, and Dorothy sees that he's about to tell the court, and then Dorothy starts talking as Lorelai to the judge about how, Lorelai, I have this friend named Dorothy, and Dorothy loves me, and Dorothy would never tolerate a man trying to destroy me, and if any man ever tries to destroy me, she will never speak to him again. And Ernie is then like, okay, I'm done. Bye, I have nothing to say. And then he goes and gets Piggy. I didn't say this, pardon-moi. Lorelai was willing to give up the tiara once, like they had a warrant for her. But she realized someone stole the tiara. And that's why this all happened. They had to figure out where they could get the tiara, or at least money to replace the tiara. Ernie figures it all out, grabs Piggy, takes him to the court. He then reveals that he had the tiara. And they do this, like, circle thing where, like, he gives it to the judge, who then gives it to Dorothy, aka Lorelai, and then it's, like, reversed to give back. It's just wild. And then we move on. We see that Lorelai is meeting Daddy Esmond with Gus, and he thinks that Lorelai is in jail. So this gorgeous blonde that he's meeting is just a nice, sweet American girl. And then he realizes it's Lorelai, and he's like, no, you're not marrying Lorelai Lee. Absolutely not. She is Lorelai Leach Lee. No, we're not doing that. We're not doing that in this house. And Lorelai's like, sir, calm down. And then she gives one of the most important, insightful mini monologues ever recorded. She looks at this man in the eye and she says, I'm not going to marry him for his money. I'm marrying him for your money. And let me tell you why that's okay. Because for the dawn of, like, ever, men have been marrying women for their looks. And, you know, they don't have to, but doesn't, like, kind of help them to be next to a beautiful woman? And that's how marrying for money is to me. I'm a beautiful woman, but, like, my chances in the world, the things that, the obstacles that the world has put up for me as a woman in general, has made it really impossible for me to have that kind of money. So why is it a problem for me to marry money? And also, if you had a daughter, wouldn't you want her to marry someone who had a lot of dough and Ray and me? And Daddy Esmond's like, hey, I thought you were a moron. And she says, I can be smart when it's right. And that is the secret of being like a real bimbo. When you can look at a man and say, I outsmarted you, and you never saw it coming again. And now we get a reprisal of Little Girl from Little Rock and a double wedding. That's right. Lorelai is marrying Gus, and Dorothy's marrying Ernie. Dorothy's lucky she does not have me as a friend, because I would be like, girl, this is not the tea. There are other hot dudes in the sea. He's not even that hot. He's just like, he's a nice... Really? Okay. And that's how this movie ends. That was the end. And this is the end of this episode. If you have stayed this whole time and listened to me rant, thank you so much for staying on. I am just so happy to be doing this. I'm so excited for this chapter and to continue doing this series, Cosmetics and Classics. If you guys are interested in watching Gentelmen Prefer Blondes, you can rent Gentelmen Prefer Blondes on Amazon. I believe you can watch it on Hulu. You can also rent it on Amazon and Apple. And also look out on Turner Classic Movies. I'm sure it plays whenever, so I always look up the Turner Classic Movie schedule, by the way. It's always a good idea. Should I list my favorite movies of the week that Turner Classic Movies is playing at the end of videos? I think we have something. Once again, thank you guys so much for staying with me, for watching this, for being a part of my very first video. I hope you like this so much. Please like and subscribe and follow me on Instagram. I am at them_fatal and I am at themfatal93 on TikTok and on Twitter. Yeah, that was it. Have a good day or good evening whenever you're watching. I just hope you're good. Bye.